Yes, it's time for Type 40 Doctor Who content from us at the Spacebook and the Fandom Podcast Network to you, with me, Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks, and our friends and companions, including your good self. And whether you're new to the show, even this entire time stream, or you've been aboard before, you're happy to learn we're the same easygoing, though very free-speaking show for everybody, whichever decade you started watching, reading, or listening along to the timeless adventures of our hero, Doctor Who. We talk about it all on this show. All opinions are encouraged, and we've even been known to have a laugh or two along the way. So, yeah, come and step into our TARDIS. Make yourself comfortable. Sit down. Crash down. Yeah, and enjoy our conversation together here on Type 40. Yeah, welcome back. Here we are again as a follow-up to our conversation last time, where we talked about Rose, the episode that brought Doctor Who back to the great British viewing public and took it back to the world stage too in time, didn't it? It was a slow burn, I think, for the rest of the world, but you were back up to speed pretty quickly, weren't you? Who've we got this time and what's going on? Yes, this is our new set of shows. Type 40 Club is our kind of friendly, open review, book club style show, strand. So it's stories that you may not have experienced for a while. You know, you may know them inside out, but wherever you sit with them, it could have been months, it could have been years, we're going to pick our way through that in a sort of very relaxed way, really. It's as much a social thing as anything else. And I think it's only fair at this point to bring in somebody who's been along on this journey with me for quite a long time and couldn't make the last one. Starry-eyed girl, Sarah Graham.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Spacebuggers.
Yay! Yes,
so tongue-tied today.
Oh God, just a little bit. It's been a long day. So yeah, you couldn't make Rose, and you weren't very happy about that, I know. But here you are for the sequel.
I'm here for the sequel, yes, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've rewatched this just today, just so it's all fresh in my memory. Just looking forward to having a chat and reliving some memories. I mean, for me, this is nostalgia.
It is.
This takes me back to my happy place. So I'm looking forward to having some fun. I'm looking forward to some potential sparring with a certain full of panelists.
That could well happen because we've got another couple of people to bring onto the panel, and we're streaming. Of course, we're streaming live at the moment to YouTube, the world's largest streaming platform, and over to the Type 40 Facebook group. Say hello, wave to everybody there in the Type 40 Facebook group over there on Facebook. Good to see you here. Hope you've got a drink here, and maybe if you've rewatched this episode in the last few months, you'll be up to speed. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so yes, we want you to comment along, and we'll go back over some of those comments a little later on as the conversation rolls along. Just stick with us, and we're going to bring in our other combatants now. It's our I don't know how you'd introduce him, really. I call him a pop culture pundit, but he's also a very seasoned screenwriter and director in his own right. Ian David Diaz, welcome back.
Just call him Trouble. Hello, Ian.
Ian, I think she's spoiling for a rumble, this one.
No, you've got to be honest when you look. If you love something, you've got to want the best for it, you know. And as I said, this is the best thing about fandom, is that we can disagree, have these little, these little tussles. But we're all fans of Doctor Who, right? We're all fans of Doctor Who, so that's what's great about it.
Yeah, there's no holds barred, but it's all friendly banter, and just in case things do get a bit leery between us, we have an official presence deployed to us. It has to be said, they were sick of all our nonsense. So the Department of Wendology have
she's our official referee.
yes, they have. They've gifted us an official from their department to keep us all in line. That's the general gist of it, and to keep us slightly more above board than usual. So yes, let's bring her in now. It's a good friend, Wendy Paris.
Hi, Wen.
Oh, she's on mute.
She's still on mute.
Hello, Dan.
Hello, welcome back, Wendy. Hi, good to hear you again.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Yes, it looks like I'm going to have my referee hat on today. I can tell already. And I have to admit, I did, when I was watching this episode back earlier today, I was watching it with two points of view in mind. I was watching it from my point of view, and I was watching it through the point of view of what I was going to expect that Ian was going to say. And that is now becoming very sort of the usual, you know. I'm watching it now. Ian wouldn't like that. But maybe you'll surprise me today. We'll see.
Ian, your reputation is starting to come before you, my friend.
You know, as I said, right, you can be one or two fans. You can be the fan that agrees with everything, no matter what shit they shove at you, or you can be the true fan that actually says what's on your mind, and you know, and just move on from there. I'm one of them, though. I'm the latter, basically. So there you go.
Setting the tone.
You have your fans, don't you? And you definitely have your fans. Yes. So the general gist of it with these shows is that yes, these are Doctor Who classics, whether they're from the new series or from the classic era. All these Doctor Who stories, once they get past a certain time, they're considered classics, and none of anything that we're going to say on this show is the first word on any of this. Far from it. We're well aware of that. And this isn't intended as the definitive or last word on it either. This is just the latest word and our latest feelings as we have reconnected with these stories to get together and to share however many years later. It's all a bit of fun and all very casual. And yes, so last time when we left the Doctor and Rose in the opening episode, I mean, this was what brought you in. I mean, to bring you up to speed, Sarah, this is what brought you into Doctor Who, wasn't it?
Yes.
This era, this potent combination of characters. So I think we said last time, so beautifully cast. And yeah, I think that they've become as iconic as any Doctor Who pairing that I can think of before or after the Doctor and Rose. So yeah, just for the people who don't know you so well, where were you coming from at this point? You were aware of Doctor Who, but you weren't a fan, were you? And then this show arrived on Saturday nights.
Yeah, this show arrived, and I'd seen all the fuss about it. You know, it was everywhere. There were interviews on Breakfast News and the big billboard posters and the adverts. And I just loved the adverts. You know, this adventure, you know, trip of the lifetime, and then Rose's advert, you know, where she said she'd got an ordinary life and she was going to leave it all away to go on these adventures, and just the chemistry of these two.
Yeah.
And you know that end bit where she's not sure what, you could tell she really wanted to go, but she didn't want to leave Mickey behind. And then when he said, you know, oh, by the way, it also travels in time, and she just runs into them doors. And it just, as far as I'm concerned, I was hooked, and I watched it that Saturday night. I watched the repeat on the Saturday. I watched Doctor Who Confidential, because that show just launched on BBC Three, and I think that's when I realised, you know, actually this is a big deal. You know, people have been clamouring for this to return, and you know, it documented the journey to get it back onto our screens. And yeah, I was just hooked straight away, and I just couldn't wait to see what happened next.
I mean, the way I look at it, Sarah, you were, I mean, we talk a lot, don't we? Ian in particular, we've talked about this a lot, about the target audience for Doctor Who, and that it's a show for everybody. And whilst, you know, you weren't at primary school anymore, Sarah, you were around the same age as Rose, weren't you? So you could clearly relate to her.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we've all been there, you know, with the dead-end job, not sure where we want to be in life, looking for that escapism. And yeah, and RTD did a fantastic job of tapping into that and having that mixture between the ordinary and the extraordinary. And yeah, it was everywhere. It wasn't quite, you know, like the water fountain show. I mean, I would have said that's, you know, when Tennant took it over, but it was getting, certainly in this country, it was getting them. I mean, by the end of that first series, it was, oh, what's going to happen next?
I'd say so. Maybe even earlier than that. But just to bring our recap up to date, while we talk about the real world, just 1 week into this rebirth, Doctor Who had got the whole nation talking sort of on those two fronts. I'm not sure whether one angle was kind of drowning out the other, or maybe they were sort of both combining to work in the show's favour. I'm not sure. Was it that sort of huge ratings figure for that first week and the buzz around episode 1, around Russell T Davies Rose, or the bombshell news story that Chris Eccleston was leaving at the conclusion of the series, just the 12 weeks later? So I think whereas some shows would have perhaps sank amidst all that potential negativity, Doctor Who under Russell T Davies, it insisted somehow that the audience have a good time anyway, and that we power through with this 21st century version of Doctor Who, that it would pull us through. Ian, how do you remember this time and it taking flight like that? It felt like lightning in a bottle somehow, and that everything was right, even though it could be perceived that things were going wrong really early.
I personally, right, you know how I felt about the first episode. Personally, when I read the stuff that Chris was leaving, I think it was the very next day, wasn't it? After the first episode had aired.
2 days, yeah.
Yeah, was it 2 days? It didn't really bother me because I was like this with Doctor Who. I didn't know whether I was going to carry on watching it or not. Yeah. But after watching the episodes and stuff, especially Dalek and the few episodes, I decided to stick with it. It never really bothered me that he was leaving at all. I
don't think it did people generally. I think for those 45 minutes, well, 44 minutes, Wendy, it was so seductive and so potent, and everybody looked like they were having a bloody good time. And this episode was not that the first episode wasn't fun, but it was so heady that it was back. With this episode, it's like, okay, the stabilizers are off. Go, 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 wasn't it?
Yes, definitely. I remember watching the very first episode and just being, and I'd been waiting for Doctor Who to come back, for years, and just being so pleased and happy with everything. And then jumping into this second episode was literally like sitting at the top of a huge slide and sliding down into an absolute fun house of just so much madness and campiness and craziness, and I have a very special. Dan and I both have a very special connection to this era and this season particularly. And there's a scene at the end of the episode where Rose says, "I smell chips," and when Dan and I met, many of the things that we did in the beginning when I first came over was he would take me to the different filming locations down in Cardiff, in places that they film things. And he took me down to Queen Street to the very spot where Rose and the Doctor were standing talking about chips, having just finished this incredible adventure that they'd been on. And that was it's one of the things about these early episodes that are very, very special to us. So that one in particular is quite special to us.
We'll definitely be hitting those beats as we go along. So just in case you're wondering, what on earth are they talking about? Yeah, this is The End of the World by Russell T Davies, first broadcast on the 2nd of April 2005 on BBC One. And the general storyline went something like this. The Doctor takes his new companion, Rose Tyler, to the year 500 million, sorry. I told you I'm
5 billion.
5 billion. I'm next illiterate when it comes to numbers. To the year 5 billion. To the year 5. To see the sun expand and destroy the Earth. The observation space deck Platform 1 is holding an event with the richest beings of the time of that entire era, observing the Earth's literal destruction. But mysterious metal spiders that have been gifted by the adherence of the repeated meme to the other guests are secretly infiltrating and sabotaging the station, everybody. All sounds very Agatha Christie, doesn't it? One of many influences, I think, that this episode wears very much on its sleeve. I found this tremendous fun at the time. And I'd say, I don't want to use words like a relief, because the previous week, it was far from an ordeal, and I'd come away feeling generally quite positive. but this is Doctor Who at its most fundamental. TARDIS lands, the Doctor and a companion walk out, and adventure begins, Ian. Yeah, ensues. Yeah. And we've got, I suppose you could say, it is lots of corridors that people get to run down.
Where did they shoot that, Dan? Because obviously that's somewhere. Yeah, they must have shot it somewhere, right? Because that's not a BBC set.
No.
So do you know where they shot it?
And I believe
is it a museum?
It's at a building in Wales. I believe it's a public building, like a council office, or a public amenity, like a conference hall or a conference suite. Because they do return to that location several times over the years. In fact, they go back to it one too many times because it's got such a distinctive flooring, hasn't it? And the cladding of the walls, you start to recognise it everywhere. Yeah. They did it in Sarah Jane too.
Yes, they did.
I do wish they'd have resisted doing that, because it's sort of, it's unlike any building I'd seen at the time, and I actually did think it was a set, to be truthful, because it was so. And apparently they did do extra work to, ironically, to get this real world location and to make it more like the set of a sci-fi show with false walls and things like that.
Yeah,
I'm never quite sure which is the real building and which isn't when the episode kicks off. Now, of course, it stars Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper as the Doctor and Rose, respectively, with a pretty big guest cast. It starts to expand. We've got Simon Day was the steward, and Yasmin Bannerman was Jabe. They're just two of a selection of various impressive alien beings that we get to meet in this story. The conceit was, from Russell T Davies, from the showrunner, that was to get out there and to do something pretty elaborate fairly early on, to say, in no uncertain terms, Doctor Who is back, and we're not going to play safe. We're not going to be telling stories about just everyday people. We're going to give you monsters. We're going to give you excessive vistas. We're going to take you to alien worlds. We're going to take you on that trip of a lifetime. And it really did cost them, Ian. So when you were talking last time, when we looked at Rose, that it still all looked a little bit cheap to you compared to the TV movie. Does this take it up a couple of notches for you?
It takes it up a bit, but there are a couple of things that really embrace yourself, girls. There's a couple of things that really pissed me off. Like, I love the way it starts from where it ends in the first episode to she runs in straight in, and it just picks up from there. I love that. Yeah. The thing I hated was that console. Oh my God, what were they thinking? Pumping something like a Jesus Christ, turning those. And the bell. Whoa. Listen to me, guys. When Peter Davison was the Doctor, we never had pumping things and ringing bells, and it's like they just went to the skip and they made this console. My God, what is wrong with these people? Anyway, I shall rest right there.
As it unfolds, it makes sense, because he's been on his own a long time. You know, he's the last.
What's that got to do with technology going forward? You can't have a console with switches and then suddenly have a bell.
If Gallifrey's destroyed, he's just repairing it with whatever's around and keep it.
No. We know that functional. Well, we know that TARDIS has different console rooms. Okay, it was discovered when we had Tom Baker when he went into the wooden room.
This is the next
so
one.
We know there's another one. Yeah. But come on, the console.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Sorry.
Well, I think it's only fair to say here that although we hadn't had any pumping before,
and Eccleston is very enthusiastically pumping at Rose.
I have to admit, I'm going to side with Ian here, Starry, only on the pumping thing. That was like, okay, they got away with it. They kind of got away with it, but that could have backfired spectacularly.
So bad.
You heard it here first, everybody.
But the rest I did
love. The Department of Wendology, they object to pumping. Pumping's the line. but the way I look at it, we not had pumping before, no, but we had thumping. You talk about the Peter Davison era. Yeah. He used to whack the top of the console all the time.
Yeah, but that's different, Dan, isn't it? You've got a wheel that goes like this. What the hell's that all about? Do you know what I mean? What is that?
To me, it felt more real. You know,
stupid. is the word you're looking for.
I think
because you kind of got that industrial feel to it rather than just like like a digital switch or
it's
something.
a stylist. This is a stylistic choice. They chose to take the TARDIS down this road.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, I'm somewhere in the middle here. When they held back of any pictures of the TARDIS till pretty late in the show starting, I think it was the initial trailer with Rose. That was the very first time that I saw it, and I was a little crushed because to me the TARDIS should have always been brilliant white. And whatever else was wrong with it and was decorating it, that was how you added character. With this, they chose to go down a totally different road and have the entire environment much more full of character and to feel. And it was a definite decision to have that it had sort of gradually broken down, and that the Doctor, because he was obviously, as we know later on, he'd been fighting the Time War or involved in the Time War or mopping up after the Time War, he'd sort of replaced bits that had fallen off or broken with whatever he could find out there in the universe, rather than being able to go back to the repair shop. Or that's something that is in the books and things like that. But I know what you mean. If it doesn't seem like it does seem like a step backwards in some respects, but I think
I do get where you're coming from, but obviously I'd not seen a TARDIS interior before, so I'm coming to this completely.
It's a stupid excuse. I mean, it's such a stupid idea to have the concept.
It's a choice.
Well, it was the wrong choice, unfortunately for me, because I mean, come on, you technology doesn't go backwards; it goes forwards. For God's sakes, look. Everybody knows that BBC is cheap. When they say create the console, we will go to the skip. We will find some little buttons. Oh, there's an egg carton. We'll stick that on there too. Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring now and stir things up a bit more. I really liked this console. I liked the fact that it had a kind of a steampunky kind of a vibe to it. I get what Ian is saying. I get what you're saying about the fact that it didn't make sense in as much as the technology that the Doctor would have been beyond imagination, so much bigger than that. But it does let your imagination wander to think that, well, maybe he just likes it. Maybe he just likes that sort of tinkering look and that sort of... It almost reminds me of a bit of a Jules Verne type environment, especially
not
when
quite, though, is it? Yeah. Because the movie had the Jules Verne look, didn't it? Paul McGann
that's
movie.
True.
And this one didn't. This one looks like, as I said last week, it's very much BBC. It's very much, how much can we save here? Well, let's just save some money here and go to the skip.
Ian, but Ian, in the way that it's lit, and in the way that I suppose you could say it chimes with the way that the Doctor's dressed, because they say, don't they, he's dressed like a submarine captain. I think that gets mentioned later on with the big jacket and things. So the way that it's lit too, I think it does look like, I know what Wendy's saying there about Jules Verne. It does look like it's sort of
it's a little steampunk kind of,
and I love the coral look, and like the way the struts.
That's the word.
The struts are like twisted, and you got the sense
organic.
That it's metal, but it is organic, and of course that's foreshadowing for later on when we find out. Well, the new viewers find out that TARDISes were grown, not made. So to me, it made perfect sense, but I didn't have everything, that came before.
I do understand why they didn't go for the white room, because the white room was definitely made to reflect the light for a TV studio, and that's why it's white, especially in black and white. It wasn't. I think it was white when it was black and white, and then when they came to video and they were doing the Pertwee era and the and the classic era, it was a TV studio and they were dealing with video cameras. It wasn't film cameras, so the white was reflecting the light. Less light you use, less you pull in power, I guess, and the less money you spend. I don't know, right? But I don't mind the color scheme in this. But as I said, the console should never have been like that. It should at least look like something that was out of this world, or technology had gone beyond what we think. Not just a cup or a light that I see in the shop or something. There's one light in there that I had when I was a kid. and they stuck it on the TARDIS.
Well, I
I'm
think
like,
I
what the
mentioned-
hell?
Was that
I think I'm-
fiber optic one, weren't it?
Yes,
I think
yeah,
I
that one.
mentioned on a previous show the fact that ball that he's got,
Yes,
that
yes.
he turns in
it
the
was a-
console. I've
it
got
was
that
a
from
like-
IKEA. It's a paperweight. Yeah.
Another one of those BBC things, right?
How do you feel in this initial scene, though? I mean, we're looking at a picture of it now on screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do love the fact that the Doctor continues to show off and continues to
Yeah.
seduce Rose here with this, like having somebody in his company.
That's not the impression
to
I got. The
bounce-
impression I get that he was just so happy to have a friend to travel with him.
That's sort of
That's
where
the
I'm going with
impression,
it. Yeah. That here is somebody to share this with. I
Yeah.
can blow her mind with this.
Yeah.
And I mean that initial shot where they're on the deck of platform 1, and obviously she can't have any concept of where she is or what's going on outside, and that window sort of opens up. We get that initial effect shot. It felt like a scene and a standard of visual effects that we had never seen in Doctor Who.
Oh
up to
yes.
this point.
What,
Oh,
I
yes.
really,
Even on the
what
TV.
really struck me watching it today was how optimistic the Doctor is, and it really brought it home to me just how far we've got. I don't want to, touch on too much about the current era because it's depressing, but just the opposite end of the spectrum. After episodes like Orphan 55 and Praxeus with the "we're all dying, it's the end of the world," and he's saying here, "You lot, all you ever think about is you're gonna die. You never stop to imagine the impossible, that you survive," and it was just like, wow. And you couldn't have got any further away.
You're going to be killed by global warming or beef. And he lists off a number of things that were in the paper at the time. Some of them are still in the news now. But they're Russell T Davies' words. That's his voice, loud and clear. That's his worldview. That's his perception of people and how we all should sort of be with one another, and how to live our lives and get the most out of our lives. And I think that's something that runs through not just all of his Doctor Who work, but all of his work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely with Starry on that. I think watching this episode, I just couldn't believe how uplifted I felt when I was watching it. And it is a really glaring thing, how many years it's been since I've actually watched it back, and I was right there again. And the writing and the interplay between Chris and Billy, and the music, that wonderful deep music that comes in, the different themes that sort of bleed through in different scenes. You're just there. You're just transported right back there. And it just, I had a huge smile on my face.
This is the episode, I feel, Wendy, where Murray Gold really starts to stamp his identity on the show too. Again, not that it was bad in Rose, but I think that again,
it's terrible in Rose.
It was kind of standard TV music almost. Here we get something which I feel really really plays a big part in casting the spell.
It's British TV music. That's what it was, and that's why it didn't work. Especially in this one,
But it
there were
wasn't
scenes.
in series
No,
one,
well, I mean, they didn't have the technology at the time, but the Americans did. So if you watch something like Buffy, or that famous scene when Buffy's mother died, and there was hardly any music there and stuff like. There was also other emotional scenes in other American shows like Quantum Leap and stuff. And the music is the right tone. In this, it tries. It tries, but again, it's the budget that lets it down. If Murray Gold had more money, he may be able to hire people who actually played real instruments. But I get the feeling that he wasn't given enough money. Therefore, he had to rely on his Casio, wherever it was at that time, to make trumpet sounds.
Ian, did we watch the same episode?
I did warn you, Sarah.
Just being honest.
No, but this is the episode where we get them first beats of what's Rosa's theme.
Yes.
And it's a very special piece of music, and I think it was used just right. You get it.
But if you
just a little hint,
but if you go further in history and you listen to the way Murray Gold does the music for the Matt Smith era and the David Tennant era, and you go to the proms and you hear that orchestra beat out the Doctor Who.
Yeah.
That's how it should have sounded. But obviously, this is a TV episode, and the technology wasn't ready to imitate.
Well, it wasn't even. I mean, we know we're sort of drifting away really from what's on screen in this particular episode here with this. But the thing was that when Series 1 was made, they weren't sure that they'd got a hit on their hands. They allocated it a budget, they allocated it resources, which it had to justify. And it was only when they knew that they got a certified hit on their hands, and more to the point, something that had that international reach, that they increase the resources so that there would be orchestral scores. There would be this episode in particular. We looked at a little at it earlier on. This episode had more special effects in it than any other episode of the show in the entirety of Series 1. In fact, they were still, I can't remember the exact dates or times, but they were still working on the special effects for this episode up until about 48 hours before it was on screen. Even though it had been filmed really early on in the entire production process. So we're talking 9 or 10 months because of the resources. I mean, the people at the mill at the time, the special effects house that were working on the show at the time were working on a global scale. But this was a really, really ambitious episode. And there's entire characters that are completely CGI. And Russell T Davies was very insistent on that.
The spiders,
things don't get compromised. But they did eventually sort of have to compromise on the runtime. I think Cassandra's only actually on screen for about 5 or 6 minutes. There were several scenes that they intended to have with Cassandra that they didn't film in the end simply because they couldn't afford to. And this, in fact, the scene with Ruffalo, the plumber that Rose befriends early in the episode, that entire scene, that entire sequence was constructed quite late in the day when Russell had to cut other scenes with Cassandra because they couldn't afford to do the effects work. So, they were all the way through this production. They were sort of spinning plates and fighting small fires and things like that.
I think it worked out for them. I think if we'd have had too much Cassandra, I think it would have changed the dynamic. And I think
it's funny because
visually Cassandra's the worst thing in this. Her voice is fantastic.
She's a bit thin. But
because you can tell with the because all the other aliens, it's physical effects, it's prosthetics and makeup and mask and what have you, and you can, especially now, obviously, it has dated somewhat. But it's always, vocal performance that keeps you in the moment there.
It does work though. It does. I mean, the visual effects is good for the time, and also it's really funny how technology has gone so far. Now, a 17-year-old kid could do these effects on his PC, and that's what I mean about the TARDIS. I mean, come on, today, yesterday, classic. Pumping up to make that TARDIS go. What's that all about?
As classic Who fans, what did you think? When all the guests start arriving and you see them all, did that fill you with confidence? Because obviously, by the mid to late 80s, the aliens were looking really bad because of
not only it really, really impressed me from the get go. I mean, particularly the Mox of Balhoun is an iconic character in himself, but it wasn't just the incredible prosthetics on characters like the Mox of Balhoun and the face of Bo, but it was also the intricacy and the beauty of the costumes and the fact that they'd cast actors who filled them so beautifully too. They didn't look remotely self-conscious about the work that they were doing. They believed in that character. They inhabited that character just the same as they would have done if they were playing, I don't know, Tracy the bus driver from Newport Pagnell. Or Phil the postman from Ipswich. They believed who they were, and everything felt like it belonged. Everything felt like it belonged, which was something that classic Doctor Who had always striven to do, but didn't always succeed.
Who's the guy in the seat? Sorry, Dan. Who's the guy in the seat? The alien in the seat.
The steward.
The one you just showed just now.
The one you just
guy. No, the little guy with the titties.
Oh, the Mox of Balhoun.
He reminds me of that other character in Doctor Who, and I can't remember his name, the little green guy. They actually made a video of him. Who's the little green guy? What's his name?
the Grask.
He has no legs. He has like this.
Yeah.
Oh, so you mean Syl? You mean Syl?
Sim,
Sim.
that's him. He reminds me of him, doesn't he? He reminds me of him a bit. Yeah, still,
He
that's
probably
it.
wasn't the Moxabal like a space solicitor. He probably represented Syl.
Yes,
Probably, yeah.
yes. What I
Roger.
liked about the
Yeah.
fact that they were prosthetics versus all special effects is that it did sort of connect you with Classic Who in that way, because even though they had, in comparison to Classic Who, so much more budget than they would ever have dreamt of, it still had that sort of grassroots feel. It had that Doctor Who feel where you've got the prosthetics and it's the believability and it's the skill of the actors and the actors believing in those characters and making those characters come to life. And that's how I felt about it. They didn't put me off one jot.
And they made a big impact. Nice. Some of them were only in it for a couple of scenes at the most. Like Ruffalo was just in that one scene. The Mox wasn't in it for a great deal longer. And we remember the names of these characters all this time on. I'm also drawn to talking as well about Christopher Eccleston. Last time we talked about how, and he's spoken about himself, how he struggled with some of the comedy, some of the broader strokes of his performance. I think we're already seeing that refined in episode 2, Ian.
Yeah.
The scenes where they do meet the aliens, where he meets the Mox of Balhoun and he spits in Rose's face, and the Doctor thinks it's hilarious. And when he gifts Jabe the air from his lungs, all those things. He really turns on the charm, and it's not over the top either. It's completely the Doctor on all levels. It doesn't feel like he's trying to bolt on other things to the Doctor's character. He's like he's reaching that bit deeper into the character.
Yeah, his performance is better in this one, and I don't know why, because I don't know the history of it. But the one thing I didn't like about the Doctor in this one is how he berated the human race, especially Rose's emotions towards what she was seeing. He didn't get it, and I think the reason why he didn't get it, he might be because of what he had experience with losing his race. So he's kind of slightly divorced of because if you go back to Classic, you've got Pertwee and Baker and stuff like that, and they care about Sarah Jane, they care about the human race. But this Doctor seems like he's just had enough, and if it wasn't for Rose bringing him back into that fold, he probably would have just carried on thinking all of us were apes, as he said in the first episode.
He does come across. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No, carry on. Well, isn't that pathos? Isn't that building the character?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he comes across as quite angry and quite thuggish at times.
Yes, he does.
And Rose has the right level of strength of character to stand up to him in those moments and shake him out of that funk and make him realize that, sort of allow him to see through her eyes all over again. And I think she is sort of his redemption.
Yeah. And I think Billy Piper's performance was so much better than Chris's in this one, especially when the aliens are coming through the door and just the look in her face thinking, oh my God, is this really happening and stuff like that.
This is something else that's missing from the current era, is that the fact
don't go there.
Well, let's stay focused on this.
I don't just mean the current era. I mean, if you take like Clara, Clara never. She kind of just seemed to take it into a stride and was never
yes, you're
surprised
right.
by anything. And the way this is shot as well, you can see it feels overwhelming to us as a viewer with the shots.
I think that's because of how Russell sees this character as that pure point of entry, whereas Clara and Amy, I think they were different creations. They were almost like children. I know they're grown women in this instance, but they are more like children from classical literature. They're very magical characters in their own right. I don't think there's anything remotely magical about Rose, and I think and nor should they have been, because it wouldn't have. That's not how Russell viewed the show.
Her reactions are just so you'd say, you'd be like, that guy's blue. It's what you say. Are my eyes working? I'm seeing a blue person.
Everything about it. I mean, look at Rose's body language. How her shoulders are hunched over when she's fed up. Billy Piper and Chris Eccleston. I've seen footage of them working on the show during these early production blocks, and seeing them working together and breaking down the scenes together, and Chris sort of explaining to her how he's going to take it and to give him pushback, and I think you really get two actors and that exchange of energy that our friend Barnaby Jago talks about a lot. Barnaby's an actor, and he's explained about the whole process and how you work with other people. I think you can see that in these characters so beautifully, and I think it's because it has that kind of.
It's like that scene. It's like the scene when they introduce who was the flat girl again? What was her name?
Cassandra.
When they introduce Cassandra through the lift, and the Doctor is laughing because this is ludicrous, and Rose is just, but her eyes are open, like, what am I looking at?
And she has
one scene.
She has to peer behind and see what's on the other side, which is what we all do in that situation.
Because that's part of the joy of it for the Doctor, and he's seen things like this and more outrageous things before. But to her, he knew that was going to blow her mind, and he was relishing her reaction as much as anything that he was seeing himself.
Really good. Sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I loved the micro expression on Eccleston's face when Rose first starts. She just can't take the suspense anymore, and she starts to walk towards Cassandra, to walk around behind her, and you can see there's a little micro expression of worry on his face, like, this might end badly, And then, of course, he's just thoroughly enjoying her reactions to things. But that little moment always sticks in my mind.
And and also another thing that I like about Rose as well is I think they put her in the right costume, even though it's not a costume, if you know what I mean. When I think of Rose, I always think of those clothes. Yeah, always think of those clothes related to her, no matter how many episodes she's been in, whether it be the Tennant era or it's always this when I think about Rose. So, but anyway, that's just by the by. But it's a good episode.
You told me, Sarah, that one of the things that you enjoyed about watching series 1 and Rose was the fact that some of the things that she was wearing, you knew where she'd got them from.
She wore a lot of Punky Fish outfits, and you can actually see, especially the red and black hoodie that she wears, you can actually see it says Punky Fish, and there's a little metallic fish. And I had clothes like I had that brand. And again, it was just so like on the pulse. This is, this could be you, and I think that's what sold it for many people. Is Rose was the every woman.
Yeah, it did for me. I can remember, I just felt, as Ian I think was saying earlier as well, the reactions were very realistic, and she was us. She was our eyes, and it was so easy to sort of inhabit her character and imagine thinking exactly the same thing. Like you were saying earlier, Story, it's like, you're blue, the Doctor is light years past her in anything like that, and being awed by anything like that. But she's us, and sort of picking up on all these brand new things that we've never seen before. And it was just so well done.
She's scared as well, isn't she, Wendy?
Yeah, but she gets overwhelmed. As we would, and she has, I think, a very predictable and very good, solid reaction that you could relate to, and that was to just run out the room at one point, because you could see she was looking at everything, and all of a sudden you could feel everything in the room was sort of closing in on her. And it was the realization as she's talking to Ruffalo in the other scene, what have I done? Where am I? How did I get here?
It was a bit confusing.
She doesn't know this man.
Yeah, it was a bit confusing because I don't know how that edits together. First of all, the Doctor was slightly worried about Rose when she was going around the back to see Cassandra and just really looking bug-eyed with everything around her. Then the next minute, he's laughing. So I don't know. It's just it was just a bit odd for me.
At this time, he's a very conflicted character. We see that. We see that in the scenes with Jabe. I mean, for me, this episode is the other half. I thought the first episode, Rose, was very much about Rose. Everything it begins and ends with her perspective. It's about her stepping out into this universe and gradually growing as a person. This episode is very much about the Doctor. As good as Billie Piper is in this, with the things that she gets to do, such as the scene with Cassandra, where she fights her corner with Cassandra and tells her why she thinks she's wrong. But as much as that's going on, a lot of the other things that we see Rose get into, it's pure sort of the perils of Pauline. It's she gets into trouble so the Doctor can get her out of it, and that's okay because this is Doctor Who and this is high adventure.
Well, we do find out about the Doctor's past in this one,
exactly.
Don't we?
The bulk of it is about the Doctor. It is about not so much who he is, but why he is. As much of what makes him tick as they can show us at this early junction, and they do that by the classic Doctor Who trick of separating them fairly early on and taking them in different directions. And so we get the Doctor opposite Jabe, as played by Yasmin Bannerman, and we see immediately how in all his interactions and his exploits with Jabe, he behaves completely differently with her and shows a different side of himself than he does when he's with Rose.
Yeah, I have a little critique here as well with regard to that. And I was saying it to Darren earlier. It does work with the wider storyline, but the fact, as you said just now, Dan, that he switches gears quite quickly with Jabe and becomes quite flirtatious and quite sort of distracted by her, and quite light and airy with her. And I thought to myself, well, why would he suddenly just be so right in front of Rose, knowing that he's pulled her from her very mundane life into this brand new place? Why would he sort of swan off with this, to Rose, this alien, and leave her there? But at the same time, my mind is going, well, he knows Rose can handle it. And he's testing her in a way as well, isn't he? He's testing her to see how she handles things.
I don't know. I don't agree. I think
he believes that Rose is safe.
No, yeah, that too. But I also think that you're judging humanity on the Doctor, and the Doctor's obviously not human. So what we deem as important or protect, he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? And I think, and also remember, he's a very different Doctor. I mean, according to stupid man with afro, what's his name again? Moff. According to Moff, right? He went from Paul McGann to this stupid, War Doctor, and suddenly he's him. So the thing is, though, they make it up as they go along. But what Russell T was trying to say was that this man has been through a trauma.
Yes.
Right. And he's trying to get back on his feet. But as an audience member, you didn't know any of that until this episode when he cries, and you know what I mean.
They drip it out to you. It's survivors guilt, post-traumatic stress disorder.
It's interesting,
call it whatever you want.
His attitude towards Jabe changes once she knows who he is. Well,
yes, exactly. Well, a bit.
And
they connect.
And she, that's how they have that connection.
Do you know? I don't want to take over this. I think the thing that really made me go like this was when they were walking in the corridor and they were trying to get to the air vent, and you had that. It's obvious. Why would a ship have wires? Like Jesus, wires on the wall. I'm like, this is definitely someone's basement, or maybe where they had some. I'm like, why? Couldn't have picked somewhere else? You know?
It's the same location as the under the.
It must be
that hospital, went it?
Yeah.
That hospital.
But also, though, Ian, we have to accept that this is as much about the telling of the tale and of, for example, they knew that by showing us these wires and that low ceiling that we would recognize just completely subliminally that they were underneath something within the inner workings of something.
It's the wires, though, Dan.
Although this is an inconceivable amount of time in our future, I think when you've got 44 minutes of screen time,
I know,
then you have to use those kind of visual shorthands.
Yeah, but they could have been in a lift or something, going down rather than go under this thing. with the wires, and you know what year that's in. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's ridiculous. But anyway, whatever.
I think we get some of that. I mean, the thing that I enjoy so much about enjoy so much about those scenes and that interplay, it is the dripping out, really, not just of Doctor Who lore, which is literally drop by drop, and that one single tear from the Doctor. He doesn't say a single word.
No.
We just see one tear fall. It's a beautiful moment. And I think Jabe, he relates to Jabe, respects Jabe, and the things that she says too. Like they talk later on in the episode. They talk about the environment, that environment, the wires and the metal. And she says it's the sound of metal. None of it makes any sense to me. But the Doctor can hear that there's something wrong. I mean, that just that contrast. Like, again, just lovely stuff from Russell T Davies, performed so beautifully. They build this relationship in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Maybe shorter.
And then they kill her.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. That was...
They were definitely trying to hit the kids, weren't they, with Tainted Love and then the Britney Spears track, weren't they, in this one as well, weren't they? So they were trying to bring in the kiddies.
It was great when Cassandra brings out the sort of old jukebox.
iPad.
Was it an iPod?
iPod.
Yeah, I mean, that caused a stir at the time amongst the learned Doctor Who fans out there, you know who you were, when we hear Toxic by Britney Spears, which had only been released the previous year. Yeah. So we hear that at one point. We never heard contemporary music in Doctor Who up to this point. So we get that, and we get the classic 1981
Tainted Love
song, Tainted Love by Soft Cell. That was allowed because that by that point it was established classic. But Britney Spears, I mean, the amount of people, I had several phone calls after this aired, and most of them went along the lines of, what the bleep was that? Britney Spears in Doctor Who.
What the hell? What's wrong with it?
I thought it was wonderful.
How did I?
I didn't mind it.
I didn't mind it.
Made it feel alive, and it made it feel... It made it feel relevant and relatable, and you knew, just like the scene with the burping bin in episode 1.
It's completely different.
I love the burping bin.
No, listen, let me finish. Just like that scene, it would involve the kids right away. I know for a fact that kids watching that burping bin scene, that in that split second in between when Mickey disappears into the bin and the bin burps, the kids watching that had already burped. They've done the mock burp before the bin on screen does, and with this, it's involving the kids in a really interactive way. And with this, you hear Toxic. I can guarantee that younger kids would run up and dance into that. I know this song. I recognise this, and that's why it's funny. And that's kind of, it's very Douglas Adams in that respect. I think that the restaurant at the end of the universe is all over this.
Yeah.
So is the cantina scene from Star Wars. I think it's all
when I first watched this on that, that second Saturday night, I watched that with the full extended family. It was like, right, Doctor Who's back, we're going to watch it. And there was, my nan was there, my in-laws were there, my little nephews were there. And everybody had got smiles on their faces. And I remember the look of delight on my 6-year-old nephews at the, the air at my lungs and the, mocks of balloons spitting. And, they got it. And they really, you got the kind of sabotage going off for the adults.
Yeah.
You've got the
intrigue.
What's
action,
coming off with the Doctor.
romance.
Even there, the drip feeding of the mystery of, who is the Doctor? Because, nobody knew. Rose didn't know. I didn't know.
No.
You guys know, but obviously it was a different mystery field because you're like, wow, why are they playing it like this? What on earth, what is Russell's endgame with this?
Well, I didn't
mind really
it.
all fed into the mystery.
I didn't mind it. I was invested in seeing where Russell was going with the Doctor, and I did recognise the fact that the Doctor has to grow, unlike some fans that are just stuck in classic and will not hear anything. Oh, it has to be 30 minutes. Oh, fuck off. Does it have to be? Do you know what I mean? It has to go with the times of what's today. I
like how I was bleeping myself out there and Ian just said it.
As I said, fans could be attached to things that really doesn't matter. Doctor Who, every show, every character has to grow. If they don't grow, you're not making any progress. You know what I
It
mean?
was
So and
absolutely crucial for the show
yeah, it
coming
is.
back,
Yeah.
for them to do a mild reset of this character. They didn't change who he
That's right.
actually fundamentally is, and how he responds, how he's stimulated by the world around him and the people that come into his life. But they just changed his position in the mythology around him, and it was all completely true to the character as he was originally defined. Okay, maybe not by Hartnell, because it was slightly different, but certainly when you get to Troughton and onwards, it's still absolutely the same character.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wendy.
Yeah, no. This is what I loved about this, is that I felt when I watched it like he's done it. He's done it. I'm a classic Doctor Who fan, and I'm loving this. And he's so beautifully brought all these elements together. He's made it. He's done us the great service of making this a program that's going to have staying power. So we're going to have Doctor Who back. Yeah, there's going to be some growth. There's going to be some change. But he's left us feeling very jubilant and very much looking forward to what else is coming. But I felt really safe with Russell by this point. I just thought, wow, thank goodness it was, it's coming back the way it has, because I just felt like it was going to be able
those
to...
phone calls I was telling you about earlier on, Wendy, I fielded several phone calls. In fact, it went on probably throughout the entirety of the Russell T Davies era. I fielded phone calls after every single episode. but yeah, it was along the lines of, one of my friends phoned me up and said, "What the fuck was that?" Literally just that. And I said, and I can remember exactly what I said to him, because I was still smiling. The credits hadn't even ended by the time I got this phone call. I was smiling from ear to ear, Sarah, and I said, "I've just watched the first full, proper, new Doctor Who story since 1989." And it's not to say I didn't like the TV movie, I did. And that's not to say I didn't like Rose, I did. But both of those episodes had some real heavy lifting to do. And they had a task at hand. This was a pure adventure. And I knew from this moment on, this was the episode that made me feel that all of my faith was being rewarded. This was incredibly exciting and potent. And this was Doctor Who, proper Doctor Who, because anybody can pull those things out of the bag for one night. You could argue that Dimensions in Time and Curse of the Fatal Death did that, or be as their remits. But this was a brand new Doctor Who story that felt like it mattered, that hit every single beat that I needed to hit. And when I rewatch it now, 16 years on in, I feel exactly the same about it.
Yeah, it wasn't. It also has depth in this episode, as I said. The idea that Rose gets very upset about the end of the world, or the world being destroyed. Obviously, she's still connected to the world, obviously, because she belongs to the world, and how the Doctor can't see that. The one scene that I didn't think worked at all, and I thought the performances were very poor, is the bit where the Doctor comes in and says, "Who are you, Doctor? Tell me about yourself," whatever, and he just gets up like that scene didn't work for me, because the performances didn't, and also the music just destroyed the tone of what they were trying to do there.
For all that I said about Murray Gold's music, I think that they should have left the music out of that scene.
That's one way of doing it, of course. Yeah, but it just annoyed me that. I don't know whether they had enough time to make those scenes work, or whether Chris was.
You're talking about the designated driver scene, aren't you?
Yes, where who are you? Yeah.
I think when it does,
I'm going to have to disagree, boys, because
I know you have to disagree. I know you will.
that really worked for me, because I was like, well,
didn't work. Performance is terrible.
Why is he being so spiky? We've just seen him, laughing and joking about, and now he is like on the super defensive. What's going off? What is his background?
I don't know, because if you compare him to someone like Peter Davison, when Peter Davison had to do scenes like that, Peter Davison obviously is a very different person to Chris Eccleston. But Peter Davison, he wouldn't be so forceful about it, you know. But he wouldn't be like that. He'd be like really calm, and you can feel what he's feeling. Do you know what I mean? And you can feel that he's depressed or upset or doesn't want to talk about it. Do you know what I mean? He has that kind of and I thought that's the kind of tone you needed for that scene. But Chris was so kind of, I don't know, he just, for me, he didn't work in that scene. I don't know why.
I agree. It did seem to go from like one extreme to the other, but I just think that that's just how that was just like the decision, or maybe it was just editing. I don't know.
Who knows?
Sorry,
Wendy.
Sorry,
Wendy,
Dan.
go
ahead.
I wondered if any of you had noticed, because I noticed this at the time, and I think it stands out still now too. It's the use of the word hell in this twice. The Doctor says it once. He says, "Who the hell are you?" Something like that. And the steward also says it. Who the hell are you? To the Doctor and Rose. And that's it's a very mild expletive. You know, the word hell is not considered to be a swear word or a curse word here in the UK. I think it may be sort of borderline elsewhere in the world, but it's still quite a harsh. It's quite a harsh way for the Doctor to speak, isn't it, Wendy?
Yeah, I suppose it is, because obviously we didn't hear. I don't think we heard anything approaching anything like that, you know, back in the day. So I think, but that made it a little bit more edgy, a little bit more modern, you know, perhaps
I wonder,
for a modern audience.
As Chris was finding the character, do you think that Russell was maybe seeing? He was also finding where
I think Chris was. I think Russell was writing for Chris. I think he's definitely writing for Chris.
Yeah. But in that case, why did the steward say it too?
I don't look. Hell is not a bad word. I mean, the place is, but you know, it's not really a bad word. Let's face it. You know,
it depends what you're into, mate. It depends what you're into.
I suppose many cultures have a kind of hell, a version of hell. So, what did you make to the TARDIS translating?
No, I like that idea. I like the idea. Like with
the psychic paper, it kind of just kind of saves a lot of time, and I like the explanation of, because you do sit there, and when I have watched other sci-fi things, sometimes it does take you out. Like, well, they're all speaking English, or they're all speaking American English, and I loved how like Russell honed in on that. But it's like, right, I'm going to explain that away so it doesn't take you out of the story.
But also, it comes back, doesn't it, in the Christmas invasion, doesn't it? So when all the aliens were talking, suddenly they started speaking English, and then you knew that the Doctor was up and running. So that was a quite good bit. And I do agree, that's a really good explanation for everybody speaking English. I still don't like the psychic paper thing, though. I mean, why did it work for him there? And
I didn't mind the psychic paper.
Obviously, this is the first time we see the psychic paper.
Yes, it is.
Gets introduced in this story, and not in a particularly grand way either. It's just a single line of dialogue. And to be honest, at the time, I think at the time I may have inwardly groaned a little bit. But as time went on, and really quite quickly, because he used it several times in Series 1,
he does,
I realised that this was a stroke of genius that saves so much time within a story, from just bogging it down with mundane things, with trappings that often sort of got in the way of the action rolling on in Doctor Who. And now when I look back, I kind of miss the psychic paper. I think, Russell, you're a genius.
But then how comes it works like this? He says, right, it makes them see what I want them to see. And then in the other episodes where, you know, Matt Smith has shown it and the guy looks at it and he sees something completely different to what Matt Smith was trying to do.
What about Rose and Jack as well?
Yeah. It's a bit weird.
To be fair, Ian, I'm talking about this episode.
Ooh.
It kind of took a life of its own with other writers, we'll say.
Yes.
These 44 minutes, that's all I'm judging it on. Whatever happens afterwards,
Sorry, man.
I'm not there. I'm not saying that you can't.
You got good.
I'm going.
I quite liked the psychic paper in this episode, and I thought it was well handled because it wasn't overdone. It was just a quick additional little tool that the Doctor had in his toolbox, and it was just made the Doctor even cooler, you know. And I thought, okay, you know, I didn't sort of. It didn't take me out of the story. I thought, oh, what a cool idea, you know. And then the scene just takes off from there. And I didn't find myself really thinking about it afterwards. I just sort of took it in my stride as we went along with the story.
I was really sad when the tree woman died, though. I was just getting to know her.
That was really dark, really, when you think about it,
Really
because this has a real family vibe to it. This episode,
Yeah.
and yet that's a very dark theme, you know. And she died, you know, in a very dreadful way, you know, in
trying to help
agony.
the doctor. Yeah,
You know, and she was helping the doctor, but it showed how much respect she had for him already. And
I think
obviously
for the Time Lords.
for the Time Lords, because she was so amazed that there was still a living Time Lord. But it just went to show that Chris had that ability. Chris's doctor made you feel like he really was in control of the situation and you trusted him. And that's what her character does. You know, she trusts him and she feel, you know, and obviously she's the type of a character that would give her life for others. She was obviously a very beautiful character.
Well,
I was quite sad.
I think that she is a little bit in awe of being in the Doctor's presence because of his almost mythical status as being the last of his kind. It's a miracle that you even exist. You can see how doughy-eyed she is just over that. But I think later on, as the episode goes on and the two of them grow closer and the sense of jeopardy really cranks up in this episode. No, it is palpable. And I was on the edge of my seat watching it again, and I know what happens. But when this is going on, the higher the stakes, the less those two characters, they have a connection, they have an understanding, and they look at things in a very similar way. And as this is all going on, as the stakes are getting higher than ever, and there is only really one solution for this entire thing to be resolved, you see they exchange fewer and fewer words between one another, because they're both aware of the magnitude of the situation. And I think here, what I was saying earlier on about the doctor's attitude towards Rose being different to his attitude towards Jabe, as you said, I mean, Jabe dies in a very for 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening in a very visceral way. You know, we see her burning, and the doctor cares. We know he cares. We know he feels it, but he carries on anyway. So why doesn't he save her? Why does she sacrifice herself? And why is that okay? And it's not okay. I think it hammers home to the people who've just met the Doctor in this last few days when this was premiered. The fact that with Jabe, this was Jabe's fight anyway. This was always going to be Jabe's fight. She was always going to be there, and this was always going to happen. She was always going to be in danger. Whereas with Rose, the Doctor has taken her there and put her in jeopardy. She wasn't supposed to be there. Wouldn't have been if the Doctor hadn't taken her there.
Not only that, but I feel like the Doctor has made so many of these dreadful, horrible decisions that he's had to make.
No,
in his lifetime, that he is somewhat used to that choice of having to be made.
I think the reason why she did that is the impression I got was that Russell T wanted to tell the new audience that the race that the Doctor comes from, the Time Lords, was very respected in the universe. And so when she gives her life for this person that this race that she thought never existed anymore, that disappeared or out of the universe, it was an honor for her to serve a Time Lord. That's the impression I think Russell T wanted to show you, that she was willing to die for what he represented.
And if the Doctor hadn't been there, if the Doctor hadn't been there, Ian, she'd have died anyway.
Yeah, sure.
It's true.
And the rest of her family would have done as well.
Yeah, that's a tense moment with the rays coming and Rose almost getting, fried like a chip.
I like that. I like the stakes, because I remember feeling, there wasn't. Sometimes you take it for granted that the Doctor's going to be able to save everybody.
Yeah.
And this made it clear right from the start. There's going to be casualties. People are going to die.
Also, I had a friend that said the same thing what Dan was mentioning about the Britney Spears thing. He also went. First of all, he said to me, "Oh, it should be 30 minutes." I'm like, "Oh, shut up." And then the second thing he said to me, "Oh, they play Britney Spears," and I was like, "Shut up." And then the third thing he said to me, "It's so American. They've got have a nice day when they were parking the what is it, the TARDIS." I was like, "Oh, get lost." You idiot. Do you know what I mean? Things have to progress. You can't stay in the 70s, mate.
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
to move forward.
Completely agree.
Anyway.
You've got it's the same principle as it's the same principle as those underground wires you don't like. It's the visual shorthand. It's the visual shorthand because that phrase is recognizable. We all know the phrase. I mean, I know in America it's a thing, but we all know the phrase "Have a nice day." What it means, what it's shorthand for. You know, it's just.
But I think
nice. It's texture, Wendy.
Yes, and I think because they were selling this series all over the world, and particularly in the United States, it became quite huge. I think it was important, perhaps, to have a little, maybe a little nugget in there somewhere, that gives it a bit more of a universal feel, maybe. Although I wasn't looking for that. I mean, I was still in America then when these were being shown over there. I wasn't looking for anything American in there. I wanted it to be the Doctor Who that I loved, which was this British institution, which is one of the many reasons that I fell in love with it. So I didn't even really clock that, but I guess because I was so used to it, that didn't even register to me at the time as sort of anything deliberate. But yeah, thinking back on it now, maybe I can only guess maybe that's why they did it, but I don't know.
Wendy, when you were watching it in America, was it still on PBS or something like the ones with Chris Eccleston, or was it on a proper channel?
It was on a proper channel, I think.
Wow.
And forgive me because I am the older I get, the more my memory starts to feel like a sieve.
I'm here.
Because,
Who am I again?
But yeah, I can remember watching it. I'm pretty sure it was on a major channel, but somebody else may know in the chat.
America wasn't a thing then, was it?
No, it wasn't.
No,
I don't think it was. No, but I can remember watching it on something, and I honestly cannot remember now what it was.
It was originally
but it was obviously available.
Yeah, it was
but we had it a year later.
It was originally on a channel called Space the Imagination Station. I know that was one of the places that was shown.
Oh, really?
Well, interestingly, we that was the time when Doctor Who in the States was a year behind Doctor Who in the UK. So we were still in that very sort of early stage of the internet then, where I had to be very careful back in the old MySpace days, because I was friends with all these different people that loved Doctor Who, and some on the UK side and some on the US side. And Darren, I can still remember Darren saying to me, "Don't look at so-and-so's page because you'll be spoiled for the next series." So I would very diligently avoid somebody's page, because I didn't want to be spoiled. But then eventually things caught up with each other, and I can't quite remember when that happened. It was during Tennant's run, I think.
I don't know.
It was when the co-production deal was. It was more so with the co-productions deal, and when the show started to become a real thing, when there was proper momentum, that window gradually shortened. It went from being a week down to like 4 or 5 days, and eventually it was like the day after, something like that, and then gradually, I think it was for the start of the Matt Smith era where it went same day date. It was a slow alignment.
It was
as the TV landscape sort of changed. I think Doctor Who Doctor Who benefited from that rather than drove anything of that. But back here, I mean, back then when this was first going out, I mean, the first episode of Doctor Who, the Rose episode, that leaked onto the internet in some sort of proto form, a work print or something. I never saw it. I never tried to track it down. But by this point, I was a member of Outpost Gallifrey, which is now Gallifrey Base, and following there regularly week by week. And you came across people who knew things, who'd been involved one step.
Well, you guys were up with the internet. I was just go to the pub and talk to my friends in the pub. I had MySpace. I had a MySpace page, but I hardly used it because it was just too confusing for me. But having a beer and talking about Doctor Who was always my thing. So
I just started uni. I was in my first year at uni. So I was.
Look at you, uni.
Baby.
I want to talk a little about the conclusion to this episode, because the Doctor and Rose, they don't save the Earth, but they do save the day, and it's very powerful imagery. I mean, the special effects are still outstanding, and the location. It all just works so beautifully, and I think it still stands up too, despite the fact that what you were saying last week, Ian, about it not being in HD and the fact that it wasn't shot on film. Yeah, I think that's a big shame, particularly now 15, 16 years later. But the way this moment at the end, those final scenes where chunks of the earth are floating and we've got the lava sky behind them, and Rose is physically and emotionally wrecked by this. And the doctor's tired and he knows he's put her through a lot. And then to sort of take her by the hand against, okay, you just, he accepts the fact that she is in trauma. And so he takes her back home, back to the earth. And when they do stand in the middle of London, Cardiff really, in the middle of London, and the crowds milling all around her, and the music swells up, and the two of them are stood still. That is still one of my favourite scenes in the entirety of Doctor Who. I think it says so much. The expressions on their faces, the dialogue from Russell, those first hints of lore when he talks about my planet's gone. He says it so offhand. My planet's gone, and she just looks at him. It burnt like the earth before its time. And he drops out that there's been a war, won't tell her who with, and the longer the scene goes on, the more grounded it gets Ian, till we get to the point where it's okay. We need to sort of recharge our batteries. We will reconnect, and we'll go grab a bag of chips.
Sorry, Dan, you kind of missed an important bit in this episode, which is when Rose says to the Doctor, save her, and he says everything has a time, and then she blows up. I'm talking about Cassandra, obviously. That scene, when I saw that scene, I thought, geez, this Doctor is really mean. But then when I look,
it restates how he feels about the planet Earth, doesn't it?
But when I looked back at it this episode again, I realized why he did it. It's because his friend died trying to save everyone, the tree girl. And he had enough. It's like he could have saved her, but you know what? She deserves to die because she tried to murder everyone. And I think that was a very powerful statement from Russell T about the Doctor, because I don't believe he's been that far. Maybe I've missed a couple in classic.
No, he hadn't really. And I think that what I was saying earlier on about the fact that he acknowledges that Jade was always going to be there, her life was always going to be in danger, whereas Rose, he took Rose there, and so it isn't Rose's place. She's an intergalactic, interdimensional tourist almost, who's there because he took her there. I think he views his own position as something different. And even though he could have been somewhere else, the fact that he is there and it's his decision, he is empowered enough to make a change and to right a wrong. It's ultimately his choice. And this is, and I think, Wendy, that this isn't something that's untrue to the character as we saw it in the classic era. It's just an evolution of it because there is only him left to make these changes.
I think and it gives him a great depth, and it gives a lot of dimension to his character, and it goes a long way to explaining why he's so traumatized, and he can fly off the handle at times, and he can have very sharp reactions at times, and the Cassandra scene was one of them, and then at the end, when he's in this scene when he's telling Rose a little snippet of what he's been through, he doesn't have to answer her question, her additional question, which is who with. She knows instinctively just to let it drop, because it was enough to sort of get a flavor of what he'd been through, and now he felt that he could tell her, because she's now had a little taste of watching her own planet burn. So in a way, she's now on a level that she had a much better ability to be able to understand what he'd been through.
I think if we'd not had this scene, if you'd have had him just stand by and let Cassandra burn, and then not have this scene at the end to explain, I kind of had this war, I think it would have played out very differently, and I don't think it would have sit as well.
But you got to wonder though about the Doctor's history. You know, obviously Moffat is the one that completed the arc, the circle of what happened to the Doctor, and he became the War Doctor, and he was young, and for many years he's fighting this war.
Yeah.
You know, when one soldier goes out and something happens out there and they become traumatized about that one thing or two things, imagine having a whole life full of it and then suddenly changing into Chris Eccleston. He must have been really screwed up. Must have been, you know what I mean? Really, more so than any soldier in this entire world, because he's lived a lifetime of war, you know. So, but if only they knew that before they did this episode, and explained it to Chris, it probably would have been a different performance.
This makes it more. I don't know. Watching it back now, knowing what we know, I think it makes it more profound.
It does. That's what I was trying to say. You said it in one sentence, and I said it in loads.
And it's another reason why I consider this the end of the world to be very much the balance to what we got with Rose, and why I view this as a not just a conceptually and emotionally, but in narrative terms too. I think where it starts from the first scene where we fall to Earth and we see Rose wake up, right to the moment in the square where they go off to get chips. I think that's a story in itself, and this is, in my eyes, has always been a two-part story. The fact that we get the recap at the start of the end of the world, that hammers it home to last time on Doctor Who. Okay, the cliffhanger between Rose and this, Rose isn't in jeopardy, but you know, if you're a kid who's never seen Doctor Who before, maybe she didn't know what she was getting into, and boy, when she gets into it, it's more than she could have ever imagined, than any of us could have imagined if that had been us in her place. So I view this as a two-part story, which is the way that I thought it was impossible to talk about Rose, particularly at the depth that we did last time that we got together, and not to pick it up with this one. But I did, one of the interesting factoids that I've grabbed is that Russell T Davies, as this was gearing up to being broadcast, he appealed to the BBC, said, look, I'd like this to go out as a two-part story and across the same weekend, so that Rose would have aired on the Saturday and the end of the world would have aired on the Sunday. And they turned him down for that. They said that it was too late in the day, that he requested it too late for the schedule that had already been put together. But I believe that it did air consecutively on the Sci-Fi Channel in America. I think it was the Sci-Fi Channel or Space, wherever it went. So the American audience did get to see this kind of as a two-part thing, but Russell did intend it to air back to back, maybe with the national lottery numbers in the middle or across the 2 days. I can't quite remember the intricacies, so if anybody out there has got Wikipedia to hand or whatever else, let us know. But I know I'm not falsely remembering that. And so I do consider this to be a two-part Doctor Who story. The overall viewing figures for the end of the world, it's still fantastic. There was a drop-off from the premiere by a couple of million, but still 7.3 million people in the UK watched the end of the world. And the consolidated figure was pretty much touching 8 million. So although we didn't have iPlayer back then and all the various other catch-up means, but people can watch it online afterwards, they did used to count people recording it on VHS, because VHS recorders back in 2005 were still... I
remember recording it.
were still a thing, weren't they, Sarah? So, the final consolidated figure was, 7.97 million. The AAI figure, the Audience Appreciation Index figure, was 76. These are all good, strong numbers. So Doctor Who was, and despite all that, what you could call bad press, Chris Quitz as Doctor Who wasn't affecting the audience at all. They were there, they were showing up, and I believe, well, it doesn't matter what I believe, it bloody happened, didn't it? From this episode, just as I was grabbed, and I was absolutely convinced from this moment on that Doctor Who was back, and it was back to stay, basically, for as long as one could conceivably imagine at this point. The audience was gripped, and this was going to be a fantastic summer of great adventures, and the Doctor, the TARDIS, and all the other trappings were going to become part of popular parlance again, and fuel popular culture, and become commonplace. So the fact that you would people would know what you were talking about when you said the word TARDIS again. I'd probably say after this episode. It was like, wow, we're there. We made it. And it was all down to Russell T Davies, Chris Eccleston, and Billy Piper. I'm going to have to ask, yes, it's the obligatory scoring round. Sarah, how many of Cassandra's ex-husbands out of 5 would you give The End of the World?
You thought about this, didn't you, Dan?
I'll just throw this together, Ian, you know.
It's going to have to be a 10. I just think
10?
there's some
10? Wait a minute, was that 5, wasn't it?
10 out of 5. Well, that's
well, 5.
Okay, 5 out of 5. Okay. So on what grounds? Just the fact that it's
because it just works on so many levels. It's, on the surface, it's a very camp, entertaining romp. But there's so much character development in there. There's so many key plot, things. Them little seeds. There's a lot in this 45 minutes, and again, and I get what you mean about it. Rose kind of feels like a prequel in a way, and this kind of feels like the first proper adventure. I just think it works on all levels. The effects still look good, and I just remember being blown away by it, and I've absolutely enjoyed rewatching it today.
Ian, how many of Cassandra's ex-husbands out of 5 do you give The End of the World there?
3.5. It's more so than the last episode.
That's impressive.
The only reason why, I like the story. I thought the story was really good and it was well written. And but the only reason I'll give it 3.5 is because of those things that let it down. Obviously, the TARDIS console is a real big no for me. And there's a couple of things in the episode that didn't make any sense. Again, that's why I give it 3.5. But where it goes, I guess. Yeah.
Wendy, how many of Cassandra's ex-husbands out of 5 do you give The End of the World there?
Oh, that's an easy one. 5.
Oh,
I'm totally with Starry on this one. I absolutely loved this episode. It does have a lot of personal meaning to us as well. But even without that, it's a wonderful. It's just a fun romp, as Starry very aptly put. I think that was really well said. It's it still felt like Doctor Who, but it also just it was just opening new doors to so many new fans as well, and I'm always going to be thankful to it for that.
Well, just in case any of you were wondering, I gave Rose 4 out of 5. I give this a 5 out of 5 too. And I know that Doctor Who would. I know that Doctor Who would get better than this, but I do feel that at this point in proceedings, and this is how I always decide whether I'm going to give something maximum marks or not. Can I think of any way in which, in context, this episode could have conceivably been better? And this is, and I know how you feel about it. Things like console rooms and whatever else. And honestly, I can't. I don't think this episode really put a foot wrong. I think it's all there. It's all working. And these seasons of Doctor Who that we're talking about, when it initially comes back, especially, they were more than the sum of their parts. Each one had its own job to do, and I don't think any highlights that more than The End of the World. I absolutely love it. I think it stands up so well. And even now, when I watch it, when I think about certain moments, particularly the moment where Jabe turns to the Doctor. Jabe, I love that character. I sincerely do. Yeah. When she says to him, "Stop wasting time, Time Lord." I only have to say that. I got a shiver just saying it, and that's just me. Yeah. Yasmin, if you're out there, phone me up and just say that to me. I'll be a mess. But it's so potent. It's just so right.
The story's deeper than you think, though, when you look carefully.
It really is. It's just wonderful stuff. I adore it.
Well written.
And I've loved talking about it with you guys here on this show. So we're going to take a quick look now. We're going to reconnect with everybody who's been watching with us live on YouTube and Facebook, see what they've got to say. See, we've got a comment here from the Script Doctors Live. He says, "My youngest was 11, same age as me when my doctor, the 4th Doctor, regenerated. We both had similar reactions, bawling in front of the TV. I don't think
Oh.
he doesn't mean to this one, does he? I think he's talking about Series 1 generally. We've got a
Talking about
nice
the TARDIS console. That's what you're
a
saying.
nice to meet you,
Crying.
Wendology there from our friend Lord Thoth watching along.
Nice to meet you.
Sun Raider Custom said this was a fun episode when the Mox of Balhoon hocks a loogie. Hocks a loogie. Wendy, translate, please.
That's spits. That's a sort of a US term. I knew exactly when I saw that come up in the chat earlier. I knew exactly what he meant.
We've got Darren Powers here. I don't know who this is, Wendy, but he says
Nor do I.
this was. We get all sorts here. This was a sink or swim episode. Space sitting, deep future, and weird and wonderful aliens, and it swam. Great fun to watch. Beautifully put, Darren. I can't argue with that. Vanessa Law says, I actually did like this one better than Rose. Yeah, I'd say it is better than Rose. Darren Powers chips in again. That location that we were talking about, it's the Temple of Peace in Cardiff. I
should go and visit that.
Yeah,
I should go and visit that.
Yeah,
that sounds like
agree.
a good field trip.
Yeah.
Another fan here of Yasmin Bannerman. Vanessa Law says, I love Jade. Yasmin does a great job. She does indeed. She does chime in here on the console room too. This is probably one of my least favorite consoles. It's too grunge for me. So she's on Team DS with that one.
Yeah.
We've got Penelope Pitstop who adds that they can't recall seeing any pumping.
Exactly. My point.
You're talking about Torchwood, then we'd have a different story altogether.
Rubbish.
Retro Dicky adds, I agree with Ian. What's going on? They're all agreeing with you, Ian.
I don't reckon much for this at all.
You get your money later.
I only like it when Matt's second console came along.
Came around, yeah.
Philip King. Hi, Philip. Good to see you. The TARDIS console is like a screensaver. You can have it
so
on
they say.
any setting, Ian.
Like to show you.
Who else? Doctor Who Chats here. Doctor Who chatting in Doctor Who Chat says, apart from Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi's console, they haven't had a good console since the 5 Doctors refit. Whoa, somebody's based and hardcore there. Doctor Who Chat. That's for Neil Perkins.
Oh, Neil, we're going to have words, love.
That's put the cat among the pigeons. Vanessa says, totally agree, Wendy. The Doctor likes what he likes. Is that what he likes?
That's what we were saying. Yeah, that he likes that sort of desktop theme.
We have Chris Persia. Good to see Chris. Not to side. He's offered a disclaimer not to side with Ian, but with the other consoles, the Doctor would have been to salvage parts from other TARDIS control consoles.
That's a good point.
Yeah, especially the pump, which was in another TARDIS console, wasn't it? I did see a pump in another TARDIS. I did see it, right? Did I see it?
We have a new name here, the Imperial Mort. It's good to see you, Mort. Yeah. But Mort here says, is this show about whinging about Doctor Who? You sound like a bunch of Star Trek fans.
Whinging? No.
Mort, for some of us, we may do more whinging than others. It depends on what we're talking about. But yeah, it's great to have you here in the chat. Please come back next time. Maybe we won't do quite so much whinging, or maybe there'll be more. The only way to find out.
We whinge with smiles on our faces, though.
We whinge because we love it so much.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And picking the nits. I think it depends on how you look at it. I mean, I absolutely adore this, but all opinions are perfectly valid. And Derek McManus steps in and says, yes, this show is a wide-ranging discussion on Doctor Who, and in particular this episode. So, yeah, people do get it. I do hope you come back more for a bit more. What else have we got? Billy really shines in this one. Yes, she completely does. Mega the Extremist is chipping in on the music. I actually think Murray's music wasn't great for the first 2 series. His sounds were really, really cheesy. In Series 3, he finally got some expensive gear.
He did.
And then Ian is right. We get another Ian is right. We're going to have a few words about it.
Right, who's keeping score?
Yeah.
How worrying.
If Murray hadn't been so good in the first 2 series, it wouldn't have had the the green light to get the expensive
Yay!
gear.
Thank you, Starry.
That could be true. Unless he was cheap to get and people were too expensive.
Crimpline Doubloon here name checks Jimmy V, who played the Mox of Balhoun. The first of, at least I think it's the first. I don't think he played anybody in Rose, but Jimmy V would play multiple characters across Doctor Who. I can't remember when the last one was. He now is the guy inside R2D2 on the Star Wars films.
Yeah.
Very experienced actor, and he'd done a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. Retro Dicky adds on the character of the Doctor. We were talking about the development of the Doctor. The character of the Doctor was suffering with a PTSD-like condition after what happened to him. So that's kind of what you were talking about there, Ian. But Mega does ask, Ian, when was the last time you actually watched this story? Your really bad memory always makes me laugh. No disrespect intended. You're awesome.
Oh dear. We're gonna have words.
Simon Horton, the wonderful Simon Horton, the original Lunatic, says he's really enjoying this conversation. Thanks for being there, Simon. Always good to see you. And oh god, another one. I agree with Ian regarding Billy. I wish I could like Eccleston more. He's just not a happy person to be. He hadn't got a great deal to be happy about at this moment in time, though. Had he? More time with Rose would develop him in that respect. We're very much at the beginning of his journey, and Darren Power steps in again to clarify that location that you mentioned underneath in the bowels of platform 1 was the ducts inside BBC Wales HQ.
So they didn't have to spend much money on that one, Ian.
Oh my god, no wonder why I look like shite.
All the pieces are coming together. And looking forward to the future. Dr. Blaze said the first 3 episodes of the series represented the present, the future, and the past, and gives a good taste of what the show is about to then new viewers. And it may be a tad cringe in places, but it's fun. I don't see any cringe myself. But it's good to see you again, Dr. Blaze. Always good to see you turn up. And Mega the Extremist says he agrees there's definitely too much music and that Murray left no spaces. So it's not just me. I say I haven't got a. When it comes to music in TV shows, I've seldom got strong views about it, but I think when less could be more, and I do believe that is one instance where that's the case. So thank you for all of these comments, all of this interaction. It's greatly appreciated. I've loved rewatching this episode. I've loved watching both of them and talking about them all here. So let us know what you think. Get in touch, particularly if you've been here this long. Please like the video. Very, very important. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, because you're not going to want to miss the next time we get together and do this. And hit the bell, hit the cloister bell, so you get those notifications about when we're going live next and when we drop a video, a podcast, another live stream, or one of our little clip shows, whatever it is. You get that notification first. You can get on it right away and leave us a comment too. We love all the interaction. That's really been stepping up lately. Lots of creative thinking, lots of challenging comments, and people, most of us, being taken to task for our terrible opinions or told that we've got it all right.
It's just we are not an echo chamber, as I think we've proven today.
Exactly.
Type 40 has never been an echo chamber in the entire 3.5 years we've existed, and we're not gonna start anytime soon. This is how real Doctor Who fans and real sci-fi fans discuss and talk and explore, isn't it, Wendy?
Thank you, Dan. Yes, that was perfectly said, and I was thinking the same thing. It's a real discussion, and we don't have to agree. We can have a laugh about it, and and that's what it should be. And then you should be able to just go and have a pint together, and it's what things always used to be. And I think it's just lovely, that you have this podcast in this channel, Dan, and it's given us all a place to be able to come to experience that. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, to share the good things, to share the wonderful things, to share the things that unite us. Or, speaking of which, yes, Type 40 Doctor Who podcast, you can stream or download us on our dedicated feed, type40.podbean.com. You can find all the podcasts there for season 3. We're gradually loading up all of season 2 and season 1 too. You can find us on Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, pretty much any podcatcher that you can name, or here on YouTube with our live streams and podcasts and whatever else, all these conversations. Get in touch. Let us know. Have we got it all right? Have we got it all wrong? That which you'd like to hear or see more of, or not. We're all ears to all of it. Let's have one last look and to see how everybody is. Disagree agreeably, says Richard Brooks, watching along there on YouTube. It's sadly rare these days.
It is.
Very much
Really
agree with
is.
what you've been saying there. Couldn't agree more, but it's something that we do, that we are definitely all about here. What else did I have to remind you guys of? Let's check back in the that's right, yes, because although this conversation's over and our trip back to 2005 is at a close, we are gearing up for the big live show that's coming in a couple of days on Thursday night here in our still new time slot here on YouTube on the Facebook channel at the new time, Thursday 8:00 p.m. UK time, or that works out Thursday 2 p.m. Central Standard Time in America, or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 p.m. Pacific Time, or for you Australians, you're the ones who are doing the real-time traveling this time. Our Thursday show actually goes out on Friday for you, even though it's live, 5:00 a.m. Real-time traveling done here at Type 40 and Type 40 Live. You don't get that on Radio Free Scaro. I keep telling people.
Oh dear.
What are we going to talk about next? We'll have to wait and see. If you've enjoyed these shows, get in touch and leave us a comment. I've really enjoyed them. I think this definitely works. All these kind of conversations absolutely work. So we're going to go away and think about it and see what we can do, what we can talk about next.
Lovely.
Yes, thanks for being here, Wendy. Thanks for your time. Where are you going to be talking next? Where can people get in touch with you on social media as well?
Well, the easiest place to find me on social media is Twitter. And that's at Wendology1. I, along with Darren, do a Saturday evening show with PJ Maybe.
PJ Maybe.
Yes, good old PJ. And we do that on Saturday evenings about 9 p.m. UK time. And it's just called Let's Talk Geeky. So we just sort of have a bit of a general chat about things that we might have bought recently, things like that, and we just sort of let the conversation go where it goes.
Just to clarify for people who may be listening to this, that's on YouTube specifically, isn't it?
Yes, on YouTube. So I'm just sort of enjoying getting to meet all the wonderful people that I'm meeting on YouTube, and I've had a very special invitation to join Loki tomorrow afternoon. On his channel as well. So I'm quite honored to be invited as well. So I'll be there tomorrow afternoon as well. So
you're not going to kick him in the balls, are you?
Well, be a little bit of a long reach.
Lucky is he's such a wonderful guy.
He is. I'm a big fan of his stuff. So I'm really flattered.
Yeah. He's good. I don't like the show though, but he's good.
Where can people find you on social media, Ian?
Where? You can find me here. They can find me on Facebook Thursday, and they can. Well, I created a web series called Rebecca Gold. That's on YouTube. Just type in Rebecca Gold, you'll find it. There are a couple of films on there as well. I'm on. I think I'm on. Yeah, I'm definitely on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I think it's at Ian David Diaz.
I can confirm this, my friend. You are on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on
Twitter. The link for this show. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can talk to me there if you want. So, yeah, I'm around.
And Sarah, where can people hear or see more of you nowadays?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm the awkward one, aren't I? Because I don't do social media. If you do want to get in touch,
I don't blame you.
Please contact Dan. Yeah, I just field everything to Dan and he passes it through.
Yeah, leave us a comment.
But you do the script reading thing, though, don't you?
I'll do that. Yeah. I think the next thing I'm on is I do a lovely show with the Geek Inside called The Script Doctor's Life, which Wendology is also a part of.
Yay!
And we are doing the Tennant story, Rise of the Cyberman and Age of Steel.
Oh,
and
cool.
That is on the, I think, is it the 26th one? I'll have to check. It's coming up. It's coming up at the end of it's usually on a Sunday at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And I will be playing Rose Tyler in this one.
Are you not doing this episode then? Are you doing this episode?
No, the Eccleston one we did was The Empty Child and the Doctor Dancers, so please check that out.
Oh, okay. So you didn't do the one where he's doing that. And he pumps the
console. Neil, we've got to get the pump in here.
I'm going to get one fitted. I'm going to get fitted a pump here so I can.
I'm going to get you one for Christmas, Ian. That's what you get. You're getting a piece of coral. You're getting
a bell. Ding.
Yeah, a bell. You're getting a bell and you're getting a pump. There you go.
Oh dear.
And if you do want to reach Sarah, starry-eyed girl Graham, you can get in touch with her care of the Spacebook at outlook.com or Instagram and Twitter at the Spacebook or at Type40. And that's where you can also find me. I'm wheezing, groaning, and posting about everything inside and outside of the TARDIS over on Twitter and Instagram as the Spacebook. That's where you can get in touch with me anytime and leave us a comment by all means in the video. Yes, we'd love to hear what you've got to say about the end of the world, about the character of the Doctor and everything that we got in this episode, and about what you'd like to hear or see more of going forward. We always have the time if you have the space here at Type 40, but that does wrap it up. That does.